And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker. When you think about caring for your loved one, wouldn't it be nice for those around you to know that loved one forever? It would. So our next guest, our speaker, Rios. Rick is the chair of the South Shore Council of the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. And he does some really important work here in our community, and I wanted him to share that with you folks. So on behalf of your caregiving efforts, it's been a long day. Rick, there you go.
Thank you, Debbie. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I understand everyone's been here since 9 this morning, and I'm the last speaker, and so you can't wait till I'm finished. And so, knowing that, I'll try to keep it short. Let me introduce myself. As Debbie said, my name is Rick Rios. I'm a financial advisor, vice president with Ameriprise Financial. I've been here at Sun City Center working as a financial advisor since 1992. So 24 years this year. So great community. I love working here, even though I can't live here. I live up in the Brandon area, and I have for the past 24 years. Married to my college sweetheart, and have 3 lovely daughters, 2 of which are in college, one up at Florida State, one here locally, and one still in the 8th grade. So happy to be here today to talk to you about leaving a lasting legacy. And I have to tell you that when I told my assistant that I was speaking at the Caregiver Symposium on brain health, she said, "What are you speaking about?" And I said, "I'm speaking about neuropathy and pathways in the brain." And she said, "You're kidding." I said, "Of course I'm kidding. I'm a financial advisor. I don't know about that stuff." So what Debbie asked me to talk to you about today was, you talked all day about caring for a loved one, being a caregiver. And so what we're going to talk about is memorializing someone. So we like to think that we are always going to be remembered. We all love to think that. And leaving a legacy is just that. Next slide. Go ahead, one more. And so when we meet with our clients, we talk about a number of different things, but the very last thing that we talk about is what we're going to be talking about today. One more, leaving a legacy. And what is that? It says legacy is about the impact you'll make on the people, charity, and causes that are important to you. So leaving behind a legacy, making an impact on those things that are important to you. And that's what I want to talk to you today about. Because as we care for those that we love, we like to think, as I said earlier, that we're going to be remembered, we're going to make an impact. I mean, let me see a show of hands. How many people would like to think that after we're gone and our loved ones are gone, we'll be remembered for what we've done in this life? Well, either way, well, that's great. I'm happy to see that. Unfortunately, the reality is that we will be remembered by our family, but outside of that, when we take a look at the numbers, and I've actually done studies on this, it's shocking how little that we're remembered outside of our family. Unless we did something usually tremendous, unless our last name was Rockefeller, or some other, or Gates, or someone like that was able to make a huge difference here on Earth. But the reality is that that's not the case most of the time. But in reality, it's actually very easy. It's actually very easy to make an impact on those people or causes or charities that are important to you. And so when we talk about leaving a legacy, we're talking about giving. And there are 3 ways to give. And all of these are important because they're all different and they're not all for everybody. But what I want you to know is that all of us are able to do it in some fashion. So I put up here, and by the way, this isn't an absolute exhaustive list of every way to give. This is a list of the most common ways that, having worked in this community for over 2 decades, that we've seen our clients make a lasting impact on those people, charity, and causes that are important to them. So there are 3 ways to give. The first one is giving today. And we're going to talk about each one of these. The next one is giving to create income. And the last one is giving later. And I kind of summarize it down to that because if we go right into each one of those, hardly anyone remembers. And so it's very easy to do it this way. Give today, give to create income, or give later. Give now, give later, give to create income. So we talk about giving today. What are we talking about? Well, frankly, this is what most people think about when we talk about leaving a legacy and making an impact on those people, causes, and charities that are close to us. This is what most people think about, giving today. And that's an outright gift. In other words, you make an outright gift to a charity of your choice. As a matter of fact, I would venture to say that 90% of the people in this room do that on a regular basis. Make some level of outright gift to a charity or cause or church that's important to them. So that's the first way to do it, is to give outright. Then you can give through a donor-advised fund. And now we're getting a little bit outside of the regular realm of giving. And what I mean by that is, let me explain what a donor-advised fund is. So a donor-advised fund is a fund that you can set up, that you put money into, that you want to donate to charitable causes. The problem is you don't know who you want to give it to today. And so you put it in this donor-advised fund, and you get the charitable deduction this year. You get the deduction right away. But you can give that money out over time. There's no time frame over which you can give that out. As a matter of fact, probably one of the most common things we see, I don't know if most of you still do, but I'm sure at some point in your lives, you were asked quite frequently to attend these fundraising dinners. Has anyone ever attended a fundraising dinner before? Of course, I think we all have. And so what happens during those dinners, they ask for money. And so what we see a lot of here locally are people putting money into a donor-advised fund. And then when they see an opportunity to give, then they give right from the donor-advised fund. And it doesn't take a lot. You can spend the donor-advised fund down to zero. It doesn't take a lot to set up. Most donor-advised funds can be set up for as little as $5,000, some even less than that. But that's a way for you to give today. But there's only one problem with giving today, is that you're giving away. You're giving away your current money that you have. What if you don't know that you can afford to give that money away? Or is that the best thing for you? Well, then we don't give today. So then we can look at giving to create an income. So if you need an income, you can create an income for yourself, or you can create an income for the people, charity, or causes that are important to you. So one of the things that we see a lot here in this community are charitable remainder trusts. Charitable remainder trusts are those types of trusts that are set up by individuals where they receive income, they set it up with the beneficiary being the charity or cause of their choice, whether it's a church, whether it's a nonprofit that's close to you, whether it's the Alzheimer's Association or another very worthy nonprofit. And so what happens is they set up the charitable remainder trust, and they receive a certain amount of income on that trust during the course of their life. And then what happens? Just as the name suggests, the remainder at their passing goes directly to the charity. So they're not actually giving it to the charity right now. They're putting it in trust for the charity, but you're getting all the income today. And of course, it's a very nice benefit if you're trying to create income. But what's probably the biggest barrier to that, of you taking income today, and when you pass away, all that money going to the charity, you know what the biggest barrier to that is? Your children. Your children. They're like, you did what? It's going to who? And so, you can take a look at something like a charitable lead trust. Now, a charitable lead trust is just like a charitable remainder trust, except it's just the opposite. In other words, any assets that are put into the charitable lead trust, the income that's generated goes to the nonprofit. It goes to the nonprofit or the charity, the cause that you feel most passionately about. And then when you pass away, that money comes back to your beneficiaries. Now the kids are breathing a little easier. They're like, okay, all right, we can live with that. But as philanthropic as most people are, most people want to make sure that their kids aren't left out And more importantly, their kids want to make sure their kids are out of the picture. So a charitable lead trust is a great way to do that. It also creates income, but it creates income for the nonprofit. And the nice thing about creating income for the nonprofit, believe it or not, most people think giving a gift outright is the best way to help a nonprofit. I'm going to tell you something that might be surprising to you. Giving a gift, especially a large gift, outright to a nonprofit is one of the worst things that you can do for a nonprofit. Because it really, really messes up their accounting. Because what makes a nonprofit exist over time is their ability to depend on regular income year after year in order to meet the expenses for their operation and administration. And so when someone gives a large gift, what happens is they tend to spend it on capital improvements or a big project, something that's what we call a one-off. But that's not going to happen every year. In order for them to be able to sustain their operations and administration, someone like you has to give that kind of gift every year. So when you give to a nonprofit through something like a charitable lead trust, that helps them out immensely because that's income that they can count on for a specific number of years. And it's funny because when you talk about charitable remainder trusts, the joke in the nonprofit world is if you put money in a charitable remainder trust where the nonprofit only gets the money when you pass away, you'll live forever. That's exactly what the nonprofits will tell you. And so, using a charitable remainder trust, using a charitable lead trust, or one of the last examples is a charitable gift annuity. Same type of situation as a charitable remainder trust, except instead of sending it up in a trust, you're giving those assets directly to the nonprofit, directly to the charity. And the annuity becomes an obligation of the nonprofit. And they agree to pay you income over the course of your life. And at the end of your life, when you pass away, that money goes to that cause. Very similar to a charitable remainder trust, except it becomes an obligation of the nonprofit. And especially small nonprofits aren't able to take on that legal obligation. So those are just a few ways of giving to create income. Probably the most popular way large gifts are given. The most popular way gifts are given, period, is to give outright. Because as I said, if I took a survey, probably 90% of everyone in this room has given money to a nonprofit. And probably this year, to some degree. But the number one way that people give large gifts to nonprofits and charitable organizations is through our last way, and that's to give later. So when you give later, you're doing it one of a couple of ways. You can give through your estate plan. This is popular because you're not taking anything out of your estate today. So you're not taking any money out of your estate. After you pass away, the money goes to the nonprofit in one of a number of ways that we'll talk about here in just a moment. But it does a couple things. Number one, as I said, it doesn't take money out of your estate today. Number two, you don't have to listen to your kids. Because it was created by your estate planning. So how do you give through your estate plan? Well, the most popular way you would think is just to leave an outright gift. And we don't always recommend that. I'll tell you why. I'll never forget, I had a client who was a resident here in town, and he passed away. He and his wife passed away, and they left 4 nonprofits, all 7-figure gifts. And he left the money outright, because they didn't have any children. So he left 4 charities, 7 figures, and then he set up a fund that I'll talk about in a moment with another 7 figures. So it's not uncommon for us, we're financial advisors. We called up the nonprofits and said, hey, we'd love the opportunity to talk to you about managing this nice gift that our client's leaving to you. Do you know that one of the nonprofits actually started laughing? And we said, okay, we'll bite. What's so funny? They said, this money's coming in unrestricted. We're not investing it. We're spending it. And unfortunately, 18 months later, that money was gone. I mean, how many people in here think, and I want to see it on a show of hands, that if you left a 7-figure gift to a nonprofit, that they would remember who you were for a long time. I would think so. Well, the reality is that memory was about 18 months long. And so what we do is we recommend to clients that they set up some type of endowment fund, where they set up a fund in their name or their spouse's name, and they leave the money to that fund, and then each year, some distribution is sent to their nonprofit of choice, or nonprofits of choice, and that endowment fund exists forever. Forever. 20 years from now, those nonprofits, those charities, those causes will continue to receive funds from those donors in their name. Now let me ask you, how long do you think that legacy is lasting? How long do you think they're going to be remembered? They're going to be remembered forever. Because what happens is that money goes to the endowment, the principal's never touched. Now we've had people say, well, wait a second. If right now, for example, with most endowments, the distribution rate is 4%. So if someone were to leave $100,000 in an endowment to a nonprofit, they would get $4,000 a year. And of course, that grows over time. But people say, well, don't you think it would be better if they got $100,000 today? Well, you might think that, but the reality is, look at the nonprofit that got the 7 figures. That money comes in, they spend it. Guess what? They're probably not going to get another gift like that next year. And so then what are they going to do? It's much better for them, and it's much better for our clients if that money can be spread out over time. And obviously, after 20 years, or 25 years, not only are they getting the original amount, but that amount is going to continue forever. One of our, as Debbie said, I'm the chair of the South Shore Council for the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay. We've been operating in this community for 24 years. Next year will be our 25th anniversary. And we had a gentleman who lived in Freedom Plaza who passed away about 10 years ago. His name was Harold Corrigan. He was a really great gentleman, I knew him personally. And he left a fund at the Community Foundation, an endowment. And recently $100,000 was taken from that fund to create an endowment for the new YMCA that went in up on Big Bend. And the purpose of that endowment was to fund reading programs for children from low-income areas. So he passed away over 10 years ago. His endowment still gives, and part of those monies were used to create an endowment for the Y that will now also live forever. And they'll be talking about Harold Corrigan, and the fact that he was a teacher, and the fact that he loved to give to causes that help children, and they'll be talking about that forever. And so when we talk about leaving a legacy, really leaving a legacy, we talk about things like this. So you can get through your estate plan. You can give out right now. I'll tell you one other story. I had a client, super guy, retired major from the Air Force. He wanted to leave $100,000 to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, which he did. And I tried to get him to think about leaving it to them in the form of an endowment. He said, no, Rick, he said, this is a very important gift. This is a large gift. To him, $100,000 was a very large gift. This is a large gift. This is an important gift. I want them to get this gift in one lump sum, and so they know who it came from. And so that's what he did. But the reality is, when we talk about some of these nonprofits like the Smithsonian, it's wonderful. The Smithsonian is great. Their endowment's over $8 billion. So when that check came in for $100,000, someone said, put it with the other $100 million we got today. And so, unfortunately, my client, this retired major, who thought he was leaving a gift and that they would be grateful. I'm not saying they're not grateful. But unfortunately, what happened was his name became one line in one program for 1 year. And so, when we talk about leaving a legacy, we think it's very important that if that's something that you want to do for those that you love, or for yourselves and your spouse, that you take that seriously, you take a look at ways to do that. And I have to tell you, another way to do that is giving through life insurance. Most people don't realize that. Most people say, well, I'll be honest, I don't have a law revenue today, and my kids would kill me if I left any money after I pass away to charity rather than to them. And so we've seen clients feel so passionate about causes that they're a part of. Whether it's, like I said, the Alzheimer's Association or hospice or animals or whatever. That they said, you know what? I don't want to have to take any assets out of my current estate, but I'll name them as a beneficiary in a life insurance policy that I have. And this way it doesn't affect anything else, but when you pass away, the nonprofit is the beneficiary of that life insurance policy. Funny story, I know a gentleman who actually is associated with the Community Foundation. He's almost retirement age, but when he was in his 20s and graduated from law school, he went to the University of Florida. I'm not advocating the University of Florida, but that's where he went. And he decided that he wanted to make a nice gift, but he didn't have any money. And so he took out $1 million life insurance policy, and in his 20s it cost him next to nothing. And so he called the university and said, I've named you as the irrevocable beneficiary on this life insurance policy. The next thing he knows, he's getting a call from the president of the university. He's now one of their platinum donors. The president invites him to stay in his box to watch football games. All because he left this life insurance policy. And I say that so that you know that, make no mistake, leaving a life insurance policy to a nonprofit is the same as leaving cash. You just don't have that cash today. And there are numerous ways you can do it. There are a lot of people, especially in this community, that have decided to leave their money in an endowment to benefit this community. As a matter of fact, the Community Foundation grants out south of the Alpine River, what we consider the South Shore area, Hillsborough County, south of the Alpine. The Community Foundation of Tampa Bay grants out over $800,000 a year. And that's made possible by our donors who have left endowments to benefit this area. Some have left it to a field of interest. So, let's see. How many people in here like animals? Sure. We have people say, you know what, I don't know who I want to leave this money to, but it's going to be in this fund, and this fund is named after my husband and I, and we want the proceeds each year to go to nonprofits that deal with animals, or nonprofits that work with children, or nonprofits that work with literacy. You can literally name anything that you want. We actually have people leave fairly significant endowment funds for the care of their surviving pet. And then once their pet passes away, then those proceeds are used to help other nonprofits in the area. So there are multiple ways that you can leave a lasting legacy to memorialize someone that you love. And I know that this is a little left turn from what you've been talking about most of the day. But the bottom line is, when we care about those that we love, we want people to remember them. And frankly, we want to be remembered. And the best way to be remembered is to create a legacy that lives on forever. So I told you I wasn't going to talk about it. It was 30 minutes. She told me I had 2 hours. So I think I'm doing you guys a favor. But with that, I'll take any questions, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll turn it back over to Debbie to wrap up the entire day for you. Does anyone have any questions that I might be able to answer on something that you went over or you wish we would? Great. That means I either did a good job or you guys just really want to leave. But either way, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Where did Debbie go? I was just about to call Debbie up, and I think Debbie just walked out. Debbie's been up since 4 o'clock this morning. So when she comes back in, I think you should all give her a round of applause for putting this day together. Here she comes. Here's Debbie.
Are you all done? You're all done.
I am. I wrapped up. Are you kidding? They're ready to go. They've got their sneakers on. They've got their chairs headed towards the door.
Well, we have a really small group that's dwindled down. I'm very proud of you guys for staying. Look at you. Applause for being here today. That was good.
Do you have any questions about Sun Towers? Nobody. All right, well, since you're still sitting, I'm going to tell you about something. When I look at the retirement communities that we have in our area, the one thing that I think that sets Sun Towers apart, I call us the couples community, and that when I have a couple move into our independent living, which is the same as our assisted living, the whole high rise is the same. So when you move into you have floor plans in your bags that I gave you. When you move into one of our apartments, say you have a slip and fall and you break a hip, you go to the skilled facility, now your spouse has to visit you there. When you're ready to come home, if you need assistance in any other retirement community, they're going to say, oh, well, now you got to pack your stuff. I know you're on a walker and you're trying to do therapy, but you got to pack your stuff and move to another place to receive the care you need. And not at Sun Towers. You come right back with your spouse in that same apartment. We come in, we provide the help with the bathing and the dressing and the medication and all that nonsense. You do outpatient therapy in our building, you get better, you say, get out of here. So we do. You go back to being independent in the same apartment. So I just really feel like we give you the opportunity to remain independent much longer than in other retirement communities. You're granted, you're going to be in a building with people who are on walkers, but you may be there someday. I mean, when it's my time, that's where I'm going. I like the place a lot. Believe it or not. And our memory care is beautiful. With Amanda, with the music and everything, it's a really nice, peaceful place. I invite you guys, if you have issues with dementia, to come to our Alzheimer's Caregiver Support Group. Teresa from Aging Care Advocates, one of their members from their geriatric care management company, actually facilitates it. No one from Sun Towers comes in there and does what I just did about, hey, our place is great. We provide cookies and the space, and you have privacy to just be with other caregivers and just take a break. And that's the third Tuesday of every month at 2 o'clock at Sun Towers. That's it. I praise you guys for coming. Thank you.